Are you a business owner or employee who needs to network but is terrified of walking into a room full of people you don't know? Are you afraid of being left out of conversations or being awkward in the conversations you do have? Your tour guide, Faith Ann, is here to walk alongside you through the networking terrain, offering tips and tricks to network with ease. She'll also bring insightful interviews with successful business owners who have used networking to expand their businesses. Building relationships is the heart of networking, and generosity is the cruise ship that will navigate you toward those important relationships for your business or career. Grab your sunscreen and suitcase. Faith Ann is ready. Are you?
Hello there, and welcome to the Networkers Tour Guide podcast. I'm glad you found the show. Networking is providing opportunities for others that they would not have except for you, so that you have standing to ask for opportunities from people when you need them. How do we create opportunities for others, and how do we ask for those same opportunities? Well, that's what this podcast is all about. It's what I'm here for. Let's dive into episode 47. Welcome, listeners, to this episode of the Networkers Tour Guide podcast. I am so glad that you're coming back, or if this is your first time, sit back and enjoy some real networking tips and tricks, because that's what we bring to this podcast every week, whether it's just me talking to you alone, or if I bring on a guest, which I have done for this episode. I have brought for you, Danielle Throckmorton. Danielle, thank you so much for saying yes to coming onto the podcast.
I have been waiting to do this. So, Faith Ann, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I've been waiting also. I've been looking forward to this interview that we're about to do. Danielle, will you tell the listeners a little bit about what you do and how you serve your clients?
Yes. Okay. So, I am what you would call multi-passionate entrepreneur. I wear several different hats. And so I'm a business revenue strategist working with female entrepreneurs to really help them design businesses that serve their life. That flows beautifully into Reach Retreat, which I've been hosting international and domestic retreats for the last 7 years. And I'm also a co-owner of T5 Plumbing. So multiple hats, Faith Ann.
Multiple hats, right. You came into my purview online first before in person. And then, I saw you at the very first networking meeting that I saw you at. It was almost like, ooh, she's here in the flesh. And it was so much fun. And the Reach Retreat was really what I first learned of you. And I would love to spend our time together talking about what it's like to plan, to host, to implement this wonderful retreat that you do every year.
So where do we start? Just how the way I've structured it, how Reach Retreat has kind of come about. What would you like to be kind of the focus for it?
Well, I think what a good way to start would be to tell the listeners what they really need to understand if they want to plan a retreat, what most people miss, because I imagine that there's just so much more planning than one would initially think if they were going to do a retreat.
Yes. Okay. So, a little background for you guys that are listening. I have a bit of an advantage when it comes to being a retreat host because I'm actually a certified wedding planner. So, I actually built a multiple six-figure wedding planning business and hosted luxury weddings and events across Oklahoma. So, I had the advantage of being able to understand the functionalities of events and what didn't go well over, the 7 years of doing that to pour over into Reach Retreat. So I will say I have a bit of an advantage, but I also have been able to help guide many of my clients in hosting their own retreats. And, I have a caliber of women that come in from various different industries, from even different countries all over the US. And what they say is, this is unlike anything else I've ever experienced. And we have women, coming back year after year after year. We have 7-time returning Reach Retreaters. We hold that, 80% retention rate when we go international, about a 90% when we stay domestic. And what we've seen is the way that I care for them, right? So when you are These are specifically designed for women. So depending on what type of retreat you're wanting to do, I'll just kind of share from my perspective. But as women, like I said, we wear many hats. Many of us are moms, are, juggling businesses and doing all these different aspects, and we're always doing for others. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do was create an experience that felt like it met them where they are. So if you're someone that's thinking of hosting an event of any kind, networking event, a retreat, a day retreat, a workshop, it's really important to understand the uniqueness of the person stepping into the room, whether that's, an invisible disability, whether that's introvert versus extrovert, whether it's an early bird or a night owl, the comfortability of that. For myself, I'm naturally an introvert. So I can extrovert really hard, almost overcompensate for the nervousness I feel inside. And then I feel like I need to recharge my batteries. And so when you are planning an event of any type, the more you can get to know the individuals walking into the room and meet them where they are, it's going to make them feel very seen.
Well, can I
So
interrupt just real
yeah,
quick?
go ahead.
So, devil's advocate, what would you say if someone said, "Yeah, but these women are signing up from all over. How do I get to know them before they even come in?"
Okay, so here's something that I do that's very different. And I know that as a strategist and someone who likes teaching, launching and selling and filling your programs or whatever that looks like, you want to like lower that friction, right? And people are like, just make it so easy that they can click and buy. I'm the complete opposite when it comes to intimate spaces. Why? Because the environment and the culture that you create can make or break an event. So I actually require a very thorough application process, and I can tell whether someone takes the time, because when you're in these spaces, it's all about community, collaboration, and networking. And so if someone's not willing to take the time to fill out an application and be really thorough, they're likely not going to take the time to pour into another individual. And so there's that barrier there. And then we have a connection call and we really talk about the truths, right? And I can tell whether someone's being vulnerable with me or if they're putting a lot of walls up, like, are they ready for that next step? So those two barriers help a lot. Then we start actually a community chat the second they say yes. So you're not walking into a room knowing no one. You're not showing up at an airport and you're like, whoa, like all these people know each other. And now I'm the oddball out. So I've designed it in a way where there's multiple touch points where they're getting to know each other, and really setting the tone of, no cattiness, safe spaces. What does that actually mean? I'm intentional with the way I set up their seating arrangements at tables. So someone that maybe has come in not knowing a soul doesn't ever feel alone.
Oh, I
So
love that. I love that. I love it when people think of everything. I love it. I love to hear when people think of the small things that are not small, and then they let the big things that aren't big go, and they pay attention to those small things that matter, like table seating. I love that. I love that, Danielle. So let me recap for the listeners. So, what Danielle does for her Reach Retreat is she creates multiple touch points before the event so that the people, the ladies that come, already feel that they have some connection. And then she's also vetting these ladies. And what I love to hear you say is that when you're talking to them, if they're not going to be vulnerable, then they're not a good fit. That's wonderful. How did you even think to do all that?
I would say, if I'm going to go way back into my childhood, I was raised by a single dad. I very much have learned to be more in my feminine. I didn't necessarily connect with a lot of women. And I really struggled with that. One, having the childhood trauma that comes with, having an absent parent, a mother figure in my life, but also just being a young girl growing up. It's challenging when you're not like the other girls, right? So when I started to create this space, I realized, one, there were many I was walking into where it was surface level. Like nothing got beyond the surface. So it really kept this whole like no bond or relation to what other people are going through. And so it just felt like you were shaking hands and you were done. You were just exchanging a card and you were done. But the reality is, people were connecting to your story. They're connecting to the relational like similarities that you have. And so for me, as a young girl, I feel like I could never get through that with people. Like we wouldn't have something in common, or there would just be, I don't know, this tension. And so I started creating spaces where I felt like women could say, like, I actually don't have it all together. Or, here's my story. This is what I was struggling with. A lot of people relate to the story that I have where women weren't safe. And so when I share that and I talk about how I make the space safe and how I cultivated that way, there's this light bulb moment, and I can literally feel it from the screen to screen of a connection with them saying, "Oh, wait, so this isn't gonna be one of those spaces where I feel like I don't belong the whole time."
Mm,
So I know that's kind of broad. I don't wanna go too deep, but for me, I wanted to fix the bottleneck I felt like I was experiencing when I would step into other rooms.
excellent.
Yeah.
Very cool. So
Kind
talk
of like creating like what you wish existed, if that makes sense.
yeah, you create what you wish existed. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do too with my calendar platform. I want people to have information and to feel welcome when they walk into those networking meetings. So talk about planning. Now that we know, your approach is a little different. So if somebody did want to take your approach, and instead of making it super, super easy, you're actually taking a different approach and making it a little more intentional. And it's really both sides deciding, not just you begging people to come, but you deciding and the person deciding, is this going to be something worth my time? What what kind of planning do people sometimes miss when they're trying to plan retreats?
Okay, so we talked a little bit about making sure you meet their needs, making sure that you're serving them in that capacity. There is so much that goes into the environment that you're selecting. And I think it kind of does go back to meeting their needs, but there's a lot of environmental things that you have to take into consideration: sleeping arrangements, travel, how long someone would be in a car, would someone have to be in an Uber alone, safety of the locations that you're going to, cost of flights, right? There's a lot of like big picture things that I think a lot of time early on retreat hosts don't think about. They find a really cute Airbnb or a VRBO and they decide, oh my gosh, I'm going to host a retreat, and they rent the house and they throw out some, personal invites or throw it out on Instagram, but they haven't really thought through the full process of one, what it's going to cost them. When you're hosting an event that's well executed, there's a lot of moving parts, from making sure you have quality educators in the room. One of the things that I knew early on with my mission with Reach Retreat was to pour back into Oklahoma female owned businesses. And I knew that I didn't want to ask for everyone to do things for free. I really wanted to
Mm,
be able to have that exchange of energy for multiple reasons. And this is a big missing piece that I see at a lot of events. I'm all for collaboration. However, when you are creating a space where people are spending their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time, right, to step away from their families and from their businesses, they're hoping to come in and be served, right? They're hoping to come in and walk away from something. And so I've noticed, when I would have someone come for free or early on in the years of planning, or a trade or something along those lines, they would actually kind of become an attendee. I would see them almost like blending in as an attendee versus kind of holding that space for other people.
okay.
Um, I don't know if that makes sense, but there was this level of exchange that was like, okay, you kind of have this leadership hat on. So when you're in the hot tub and you're talking about business, like, you're asking Faith and those questions. You're pouring into her to ensure that the attendees really receive the service that they need and not kind of become the traditional pouring into everyone else that they were kind of trying to step away from.
Are you saying that when you pay somebody to come and lead a workshop at your retreat, then they kind of take on the more leadership role? When you invite the speakers, do they generally stay for the whole time?
Yeah, so that's what's really different too about a lot of the ways that I've structured our events, is that a lot of times you'll go to an event and it's like the speaker educator is unreachable. Like you're wanting to raise your hand and you want to ask a question, but there's 30 other people in front of you, or you only have a 15-minute window for a Q&A after a session. Or a lot of retreats too, because of cost, right? They will bring people in just to do a presentation and then they leave. And we don't do that. It's very immersive. And so, like, you're dining with your educators, you're in the hot tub with them, you're having late night chats, you're having coffee with them in the morning. Like, you're able to get beyond the surface. And yes, it does make it a bit more challenging on a budget wise, but I believe that the growth that I've seen over the years with retreat treaters and the way that they continue to come back is because they're served in the way that the expectations were. They're met, if that makes sense.
So, do you have to talk to your speakers specifically about this part of it? You probably do.
Yes. So we do a speaker agreement. And that's one thing that I wish I would have done when I first started. So if you've done a retreat and you're like, okay, I feel like my educators kind of became the ones that needed to be in the room versus the leaders, which is great. Like we make our team members, our retreat leaders, same swag, same excursions, all the things. Like we cater to their meals, all of the things, but there is this level of like you're wearing this leadership hat while you're here. And so we do a speaker agreement that outlines like this is how we want you to show up. We do meetings ahead of time. We tell a story with the way they present so that it doesn't make the attendee feel like she's far left field and then far right field. So like there's a synergy and a storytelling aspect to the way that you plan the content to take them on a journey. And it's nice too because it's not fun when you have to pull someone aside, but sometimes I'm like, hey, I need you to come and engage with the girls. And I'm able to kind of do that based on contract, but also, there's an energy exchange. And most of the time when that's there, I don't even have to worry about it because they're geared up to go and serve.
Hi, listeners. Are you someone who struggles to make a great first impression when you meet others? Faith Ann has put together her guide to help you make a great first impression no matter where you are. This quick guide gives you simple tips to leave a powerful first impression, the first step to relationship building. Go grab this free resource today by clicking on the impressions link in the show notes.
They may receive some benefits from the other speakers, but they should always be looking for ways that they can pour into the attendees instead of the other way around. Really thoughtful. And then what are some other environmental challenges that people might miss when they're trying to plan a retreat?
So one of the things I've noticed, I'm sure environmental weather, knowing what time of year to go visit these places. A lot of times people will pick like high tourist season and you've got a group of 20 or 30 people and there's no way to have them go see the sights. Someone's been like, let's do Santorini. And I'm like, that is a very small space. And the time of year that we would travel, we wouldn't be able to dine at any restaurants together. We wouldn't be able to ride together. There was a lot of factors there. Also, do you really want to be on a plane for 30 hours? It sounds fun to go to Bali, but then how are you going to show up when you've been on a plane for 30 hours? So you have to hear the feedback that your attendees give you, but then also ultimately have them trust you that you're selecting a location that you feel like is the best for their overall experience. Another one is food. This is one of the highest, sometimes even higher than my locations that I invest in is a private chef. There's multiple reasons for that. One, I love supporting Janice. She's a local Oklahoma chef. Harris Custom Catering does all of my retreats, travels with me. This year, she actually bought a ticket to come in as an attendee for Belize since we have a chef on site. So we're really excited. But you have to be able to accommodate not only allergies and things like that that come up, but you don't want to have them cooking and cleaning. You never want to have someone hungry at a retreat. Maybe it's a Southern thing, Faith Ann, but
right.
you're never hungry at any time in the night, morning. I don't care when you wake up, you have food available. It's based on what you uniquely want and desire, which is important for comfortability. But I think too, you get to locations and you realize, oh, I can't accommodate any of these allergies, or they're going to be late, or there's going to be, a lot of bottlenecks there. And so I think a lot of times we cut back and we just think, we'll just buy some veggie trays. But then you're spending your whole time setting up the kitchen, prepping the kitchen, rather than what your attendees paid for was your presence. They paid for your presence. And so that's definitely a big investment, but hands down, do not be worrying about food. Have the right support in your hand, back pocket that wants to serve and be there. It's so fun for Janice to be like, "Oh, I made this dessert for you, even though you can't have rice, dairy, gluten, or wheat, or whatever." Like it's just nice to see how she shows up for them.
That's so nice. I love what you said about they don't want, how did you say it? They want your presence. They don't want your organizational skills. They want you to be present.
Exactly. My very first Reach Retreat was in the middle of the pandemic. So I actually launched it 2019. It was supposed to be May of 2020. We had to pivot to September 2020, make it a really small group. I almost gave up, and I'm so glad that I didn't. But it's so challenging when you hear your feedback say, I thought you were going to speak. I thought I was going to get to hear from you. You were busy setting up tables the whole time, and I really wanted access to your brain. And I was just thinking, who wants to learn from me? Like, I'm just cultivating this space. And I took that to heart. And so I even bring in a personal assistant that comes every single Reach retreat, and she knows how to set up the tables, how to decorate, how to guide the timeline, how to set up my computer, all of those things so that I actually can be sitting in, my pajamas and having tea time with the girls instead of being like, okay, everybody, it's time to move to the next thing.
That's smart. So it's not you moving them to the next thing, it's the assistant.
Correct.
Oh, what a really cool, golly, Danielle. This is, you're just blowing my mind with all of these small things that you're thinking of that serve the overall effect that you want, which is being able to relax. So, as we kind of wrap this conversation up, I do want to just briefly touch on, do you have some networking advice for attendees who are going to a retreat? When we think retreat, we're going to go and we're going to get all this new knowledge, but how can someone actually use that time to its utmost by actually making it a networking time as well?
Yeah, so connection obviously is key. So when you are moving into a retreat, yes, the overall connection and the way that connection supports your business is so important. If you were to ask me, what's going to lead to sustainability in your business, yeah, you could push hard for a short amount of time. You could get successful with some Facebook ads, but the reality is sustainability comes from the community that's around you, that's sharing your name in a room you're not in, who's hiring you for your services, who's leaving reviews for you. So one of the things that was really important for me when creating retreats that's very different than most is that they're not industry specific. So you have the capability of hiring, partnering, collaborating, and building with the women in the room. We've seen thousands and thousands of dollars of exchange, support, hiring each other, launching projects together, starting businesses together, creating online Facebook communities together. It's wild what I've seen over the last 7 years. And when you're coming in, like this year, we have 8 first years that have never been to Reach Retreat. And so one of the things I recommend is connecting with each other ahead of time. And so we create a digital directory that goes out well in advance. It has their bios, it has all of the social media, their websites. I encourage them to get to learn the women that they're stepping into the room with. Reason being is for me, and I know a lot of you, we can't talk to 20 or 30 people in an hour, right? So you look for some of those common threads, whether it's maybe ages of kids, type of industry, maybe the state that you live in. You look for some common pieces so that way when you can, run into them at the airport before you get on the Reach Retreat flight, or you're coming into the welcome party, you're able to find those 1 or 2 people that you have something in common with and have a connection point with them. You're looking for that common connection point. It may not necessarily be that you both have the same, pet name, but it could be that you actually are interested in learning more about AI. So you realize that she's really working on how to use AI and leverage it in your business. And you can just ask questions. That's another thing. When you are walking into a room, ask questions about other people. Don't just make it about you. So those are a couple tips that I give them. And then I always say at every single Reach Retreat, You get out of it what you put into it. If you made a connection here and you leave and you disappear, then you're not going to build the relationships that are going to sustain for years ahead. If you stay plugged into the group chat, you come to the quarterly calls, you have one-off coffee dates with each other, you start your own WhatsApp chat, like you have to nurture the relationships that you make, and that's how they continue to grow.
That's really good. So you provide a directory before they even get there with ways that they can connect with each other based on common interests or common hobbies or common business struggles. And then while they're there, you remind them that they're going to get what they put into it. And the follow-up is a piece that's just as necessary as the actual retreat, the rapport that you're building with the women in the room while you're there. The follow-up is just as important, or what you've done how many days is the retreat?
This one's 6 days, 5 nights.
Wow. Yeah. So you really get to know these ladies, and Danielle's done all the hard part, so you're just there, just enjoying yourself, but it would all be for naught if you don't follow up after. Yeah. So that's a great thing to also remind them of. And so I'm so glad you're doing this. Do you want to share any details about the retreat itself before I ask you my last 2 questions?
Sure. So Reach Retreat is an annual retreat. So we do a mix between international and domestic. You never know where we're going to go. Currently, we are headed to Belize in November. We do have 2 spots left at this point. And like I said, we have 16 women right now, and 8 of them are first year. So if you're like hearing me say 80 and 90% retention rate and you're nervous and all those things, we make space for new retreaters every year. And it's going to be amazing. And like Faith Ann said, in 6 days and 5 nights, if you think about the amount of hours that you're spending with this community without distraction, with intention that's been curated to build relationships, it is wild. Reach Retreat has changed my life. Like I get something from it, I gain something from it every year. So if you're not able to go to Belize, follow along and just see. And one of the things that you'll see from all the Reach Retreaters who've left testimonials for you guys is it's hard to put into words, but if you feel the tug, it's there for a reason. And we believe that. Every Reach Retreater says like who this person was supposed to be in the room. Like it all makes sense. If it feels intimidating, that's good.
Okay.
Growth comes from intimidation and stepping out of your fear, but know that it is safe. We have a licensed therapist on site. We don't just go through life and business parts and traumas and deep things and leave you unprocessed. Like it is a cultivated, safe space, and I truly mean it.
Well, this has been a great conversation. And so I always ask guests 2 questions as we end our time together. Danielle, what do you like to see when you network?
What do I like to see? I like to see the host or whoever is putting together the event to make a personal mission to greet every single person that walks through the door.
That's a great mission. I kind of harp on that too. Yeah, there's people who will come into certain events that I attend regularly, and the host, it's like 20 minutes before she even sits down, because that's what she does. She talks to every single person. And then I've been to other events where I'm doing that too, but it's not my event. And the people are like, "Oh, do you host this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And I look over and the hosts are seated in the far corner of the room. I completely 100% agree. The host should make it a mission to greet every single person. What do you not like to see?
Okay, well, I feel like it's going to be the same answer. And it goes back to what you guys heard about, little Danielle that was left out of the girl circle. But the reality is I don't like to see someone left out. And I know we get excited, you guys, to see people that we recognize online or that we see every week at coffee. We're excited to catch up, but I really don't like to see someone left alone, like someone in standing around awkward, not sure who to talk to, and is just staring at their phone, or, you can kind of tell when someone is feeling uncomfortable. And so for me, even if it maybe makes you uncomfortable when I walk in, I'm like, hi, I just really try to look for the person that feels like they're kind of being left out. And I know we have a due diligence on our own to insert ourselves and kind of walk up, but it can be really intimidating when you walk into a group where everyone knows each other's names and they're greeting each other. And then here's the woman that finally got the courage to show up, or the gentleman finally got the courage to show up to this event and like can tell they're the oddball out.
Yeah. That's one of the things I talked about in my live in my Facebook group recently was if you go to an event and they're all just acting like eighth graders, cliquey, it's not worth your time because the bar is very low. It's not too much to ask of people who know each other to come over to those people who look like deer in headlights and welcome them in. We're not eighth graders. Let's grow up. And like you said, our conversations with the people we know well can always wait. That can always wait. And I think there's a difference between a networking meeting where it's open to all and people are coming in and you're separate one-to-one. If you need some support and you call your friend for coffee, that's where that time is for. But open networking really should be about working. And that means building new relationships. And you can't build a new relationship unless you actually welcome people in. It seems so like common sense to me, but unfortunately, there are times when I don't see that.
And I think sometimes we don't have the self-awareness. Maybe you're not the person that felt left out. Maybe you were the person that always fit in, and you are the person that shows up every week and you're just grateful people know your name. And, I got this piece of advice back in my MLM days, and it was, you may not be the ace, but they might know the ace.
Right.
So if you also are asking, hey, who are you? And they say something that's like completely irrelevant to your industry and you start to shut off and you're looking past them and doing those things, you're missing an opportunity because just because they may not be your ideal client, they probably know someone and they're out there networking and they're connecting. So remember, it's not just about what they can do for you, period. I mean, yes, I'm saying, cool, they might know an ace. But the reality is it's asking the right questions and being present, and it will go so far.
Amen.
There we go.
Preach it. Well, where can people find you, Danielle, if they want more information about Reach Retreat or any of the other wonderful things that you do?
So it's Danielle Throckmorton on Facebook and Instagram and pretty much anywhere that you search. There you should be able to also search Reach Retreat. And then again, T5 Plumbing as well. So if you guys are local to Oklahoma and need that support, then we'd love to be there for you.
Thank you so much, Danielle. This has been a great conversation. And listeners, take some advice, even if you don't host a retreat. Can you think of everything? Can you think of those small things that make people feel welcome and seen? If you can do that, it's going to pay off for you in a big way. If you are a local Oklahoma City networker, check out Premium OKC Networking. This is my networking calendar that if I could clone myself, I would go to every event on this calendar. I have chosen them carefully based on the people who are organizing or have founded the events and where connection can happen. I would love to invite you to check out Premium OKC Networking and see if you want to be part of my calendar and community forum. You can find the link to Premium OKC Networking in the show notes.
You've been listening to the Networkers Tour Guide podcast with Faith Ann Basor. Share this episode with a friend and be sure to come back next week for more networking tips and tricks from the Networkers Tour Guide.